Okay, I got to go through the basics on classical conditioning, and Mr. Woodard added to that. We're going to rinse and repeat. I'll do the basics on operant. Mr. Woodard will add. So I'm going to leave this slide. We should have already talked about this in class. Mr. Woodard really enjoys that particular experiment that's referenced on this slide. So we'll just talk about that. And then the shaping video is the one that you should have watched about with the pigeon that turns a certain direction. I'll reference that here in the next couple of slides. So with operant conditioning, what we're really starting to look at is trial and error learning. We're really going to start learning through consequences. So trial and error learning, nothing earth-shattering there. We try different things, whichever behaviors elicit the consequence that we like, we're going to continue on with that behavior. So with operant conditioning, we really start to look at rewards and punishments. And those rewards and punishments are going to influence our behavior. Here's a major difference, the main difference between operant conditioning and classical conditioning. Classical conditioning revolves around involuntary responses, salivation, flinching, okay? Operant conditioning is all going to be about voluntary responses. So the pigeon turning a certain direction, or on this slide, a seal balancing a ball for food, okay? So operant, voluntary, classical conditioning, involuntary responses, behaviors. Mr. Woodard talked about or mentioned B.F. Skinner in an earlier video. This gentleman was all about behavior. He did not care about our thought processes. He didn't care about what was going on in here. He was all about observing our behaviors and then being able to manipulate our behaviors through consequences. And many of his ideas are based on Thorndike's law of effect, which sounds really cool, but this is one of the all-time obvious laws I've ever seen. Rewards make behaviors more likely, punishments make behaviors less likely. Not too earth-shattering yet again. That's Thorndike's law of effect. So here's some of the terminology that we need to know and understand. I was watching TV the other night, and sure enough, they incorrectly used some of the terminology. So let's go ahead and get all the terminology straightened out for you. First of all, positive reinforcers. The word positive means we're going to add something to the situation. A reinforcer is something that is going to increase the probability of that behavior happening again. So this is kind of a classic reward. Okay, so stimulus is presented after a response that increases the probability. It's this presented that makes it positive. We're going to add something to the mix. Negative reinforcers also increase the behavior. And that's what's key. A lot of people, TV shows and whatnot, they'll mess this up. In fact, we've got a video later on that will show you that in Ghostbusters, they make this mistake. So negative reinforcers take something away in order to increase a response. Okay? So the terms to really understand is when you are using a reinforcer, you are trying to increase a behavior. When something is positive, you're adding it. If it's negative, you're taking it away. Okay, let's look at a couple of examples. Getting a hug. Well, I'm going to call that positive reinforcement. Okay, I like getting a hug. It's something that's added to the situation. Okay. Oh, I was so upset when my wife got a different car because the old car didn't really have one of those seatbelt beeping things. This one has one of those beeping things, and it gets louder real quick if you don't put your seatbelt on, which is good. That's a good thing. You need to wear your seatbelts. Fastening a seatbelt to turn off the beeping would be negative reinforcement. Here it is. The behavior is fastening the seatbelt. You are taking away that annoying beeping sound in order to increase the behavior of fastening the seatbelt. Okay, negative reinforcement. You want to increase the fastening of the seatbelt, so you take away the annoying noise. Receiving a paycheck, I do good job work, here's your money. That's positive reinforcement. And then getting driving privileges back for good grades. This again would be positive reinforcement. I'm giving you something for doing for doing something that I want you to continue to do. I'm going to come back to that example though in a few minutes because you can look at the implication of why the person would need to get driving privileges back in the first place. Okay, so we'll come back to that later. Okay. Primary reinforcers are things like food, water, sex, biological things. We need to reproduce. We need to eat. We need to drink. So those are innate biological reinforcers. We need those things, so they're going to be very, very strong as far as the reinforcement abilities of them. Okay? Secondary reinforcers are things that we have come to associate with those primary ones. So money is a very easy example. Money is nothing but some fibers all put together. It does absolutely nothing for us. However, we've associated now money with food, water, entertainment. Okay, so we associate money and that becomes a reinforcer. Tokens, you'll often hear about like prisons having token economies so that prisoners can actually earn little tokens just like they would money out out of prison, and then they can use those tokens to buy extra exercise time or extra time at the library, those kinds of things. So secondary reinforcers. Okay. Oh, and also you'll see this probably more often than secondary reinforcers is conditioned reinforcers. Those have been conditioned. Remember what Mr. Woodard said, just replace conditioned with learned. Those are learned reinforcers. Okay, I've learned that money can get me food. All right. Punishment. Reinforcers increase a behavior. Punishments decrease a behavior. Okay, makes sense. So this is different from negative reinforcement, again, because negative reinforcement, I'm taking something away, but I want to increase the behavior. Punishment, I'm just going to either add something or take it away, but I want to decrease the behavior. Okay, so let's look at this example. Let's say I've got a monkey in a box, and I want the monkey to learn to press the lever. So what do? I have a really loud noise going, and the monkey's kind of upset and doesn't know what to do, and he sees this lever over there, and he finally hits the lever, and the noise goes off. Okay, negative reinforcement. I've taken away the loud noise in order to increase the behavior of pressing the lever. What if I didn't want the monkey to press the lever? What if I had a monkey and he's running around his little box and he just keeps pressing the lever, and I don't want him to press the lever anymore? Okay, now I'm going to punish him. So now I'm going to have no noise, and the monkey's just hanging out, and he's looking for something to do. So he presses the lever, and then I hit the loud noise. That's punishment, and it's called, and here's the one that trips people up, it's positive punishment. I've added a stimulus, the loud noise, in order to decrease a behavior, the pressing of the lever. Okay. That's a great little cartoon. Kids do this all the time. I gotta tell, Mr. Woodard mentioned a goat in the last video. I'll mention my goat in this video. We are trying to get our goat right now. We have one of these goats that she starts bleating super loud at about 3:20 every afternoon, and we're trying to get her to stop and wait until about 4 o'clock. So we're trying to like wait her out a little bit. If we don't do that, if I run outside as soon as she starts to bleat and I give her food, guess what she's learned? Guess what she'll continue to do? Why? Because I've positively reinforced her. I've given her food. I've given her food to stop her, I've given her food to stop her bleeding. Sorry, I had a little hiccup there. I've given her food to stop her bleeding. So what did she learn to do? She's learned to bleed. And doggone it, what did she do to me? She negatively reinforced me. In order to stop that bleeding, what do? I behave in a manner that will stop the bleating. So I go out and I give her food. Okay. Let's see. Last slide here real quick. So I've already talked about this. Positive punishment, I'm going to apply an adverse of the stimulus after a response. So I'm going to, let's say I don't want you to, one of my dogs, actually, the other day, she just barrels right in front of me. And so we're walking out to the yard, but she almost trips me because she just barrels and she doesn't stay behind me. So I'm going to apply a punishment in order to keep her from doing that. And for the dog, it just, they hate that sound. So I've applied something and she knows to back off. Or omission training, which is negative punishment. I'm going to take something away that you want after a response. So go back to the bad grades and driving privileges. You get bad grades. I don't want that. I want that behavior to stop. So what do? I take away your driving privileges. Okay, I'll stop there. Mr. Woodard can review and add a few more things.